And we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of the Payoff pitch for the 2024 season. My name is Dan. I'm here with Drew, and we are here to give you guys a preview of what's to come in the MLB season. Drew, how are you feeling going into this year? You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, man. No, I think this is going to be a fun season. We saw a team who's never won the championship win the series. We saw a year where there was no Astros, no Dodgers, and I thought it was a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was one of the most fun World Series, especially seeing like rookies like Corbin Carroll, and then you got Seager and Simeon kind of proving their worth. Everyone was questioning how much money they spent on the contracts. And I think we're gearing up to a great year, especially. I mean, everyone's talking about the Dodgers and the we need a salary cap and salary. It's ruining baseball. But I'm here. I get their points. I'm excited to see what happens this year because it means anytime the Dodgers lose as a Braves fan, it's a win for us. But with that being said, let's go ahead and we're gonna get right into it. Who's hot, who's not? Drew, what do you have for us to look forward to? Who do you think is going to be a team to surprise us this year?
Well, I'll be honest. I think the Orioles are the big one right now. They're going through a ownership change, and yet despite that, they're putting money where their mouth is. They had a 101 win season last year. They won their conference or their league. They won their division. Despite everybody picking, I think the Dodgers or not the Dodgers, the Yankees that win that division last year. And they came in out of nowhere. They've got some great young talent. Gunnar Henderson. They just traded for Corbin Carroll, who even at 15, Corbin Burns at 15.
They traded Corbin Carroll. It's over. They would have been.
No. They'd be the world champions right now. $15.6 million. I think that's a steal for a frontline starter. He'll be the number one day one starter, I believe. I think they're the team that's going to do. They did well last year to do what they did, but I think they're going to make a playoff push. What they were lacking was starting pitching, and Corbin Burns is going to really lock that up for them. I've got a couple of teams that I think are hot that are not probably surprising to most people. I've got the Braves. They finished with the best overall record last year, 104 wins, and they picked up Chris Sale in the offseason. Now, of course, they lost a few pieces, but Chris Sale is a hometown kid. He's excited to be here. In 2023, he played 20 games. His ERA was a little high, had some problems with some walking people. In the previous 2 years, he was hurt. He only pitched a combined 11 games. But prior to that, he's got a career ERA of 3.1. He's a 7-time All-Star. He's a world champion. I think he's on his way to Cooperstown. And if he's happy to be here and he can rehab, he's going to have a bounce-back season.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, too, a lot of people, I know last year a lot of people had said it, was where everyone talked about, oh, he's not the same anymore. He's been walking people. He hasn't pitched in 2 years. Now, obviously, he's trying to get the velocity back to where it was. And when that happens, especially when you haven't been able to pitch at this level in that long, it leads to a little bit less control. We've seen it a lot lately where a lot of these guys who are throwing 100 consistently, the control isn't there sometimes. So I think if there's any pitching staff that can really kind of help with that, especially not even that, just I'm thinking the long-term future of Strider. I think it's a great move because who better to teach your ace pitcher who throws 100 and has a nasty slider than a pitcher who was one of the best pitchers for a good couple years, who threw 100 and had a nasty slider. So I think it's a big one. I think it's big. Is there any other team you're looking at?
Well, I wanted to mention a couple of the moves the Braves made as well, or I guess people that are coming back that are kind of in that same boat as Chris Sale, where they're coming off of an injury. You've got AJ Minter, he's coming back, but then you've got Tyler Matzik, who missed all of last year with Tommy John surgery. He's known for throwing gas, throwing heat. So I'm curious to see where his control is going to be and what the velocity looks like. You've also got Huascar Ynoa, who's coming back. He missed all of last year as well. So I think he would be a great addition to the team. My last team is obviously going to be the Dodgers. I mean, they're the winners of the offseason just by the nature of the two players they got. There's a few of them really, but you got Teoscar Hernandez, you got Yamamoto, and you got Otani. I mean, they spent over $1 billion off season, and I'm curious to see what happens and how it really works out for them because they've been big spenders in the past, just like the Yankees, but it doesn't always work out. I wouldn't call Atlanta a small market team by any means, nor would I call Philly a small market team, but they're not spending quite as much as these other guys are, and they've got chips to show for it. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think obviously, I mean, like you look at the odds of like everything, like the highest odds of them to win anything or do anything is like to win the World Series. They're still like nearly at like a minus number. I mean, they're projected the most wins this year. I think it's at 105.5 last I looked. But I mean, yeah, I think the crazy thing is that's just such a tough division to play in, regardless of who's on your team. And we saw it last year when everyone thought, okay, we got the first year of the Freddie Freeman experience. You know, let's see what goes into this year. And then they struggled the first month. I think the Giants and the Diamondbacks were the top two teams in the division the first month. Even the Rockies were out of last place for a good couple weeks. But I mean, that's one of those teams that they always kick it in right around June and July, like right around the All-Star break, they kick it into high gear and they dominate the division. So, I mean, obviously that's a big one. One of the teams I'm looking at that I've been very high on them. I've not shut up about them for about 2 weeks. I already wrote 2 whole MLB articles over on our Substack channel about them. Kansas City Royals, I think, are going to surprise a lot of people this year. You have a team. Well, obviously, you have Bobby Witt, who is an absolute stud. You brought in some decent pitching. You got Kyle Wright from the Braves, who is he won 20 last year, right? If I remember right. Like I don't want to say it'd be wrong, but he won around 20. He won close to 20 games for a couple years.
I want to say it was 19 last
year. Yeah, I was gonna say
that.
he was around that number for a while. So and you brought in, you still have Brady Singer, who showed improvement last year. You brought in Will Smith, and Nick Anderson. So I think you might have to call them the Kansas City Braves at this point, which would go well with the Chiefs. But Bubic I think he's a good India rotation guy. But the guy that I'm looking at the most this year is Cole Reagan's, the guy they got from Texas in the Chapman trade. Because if you look at his numbers last year, his ERA as a whole, it didn't look like he had a good year. But if you look at his numbers from like pre-All-Star, pre-trade to post-trade, his ERA went down significantly. I actually have it right here. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. If you look over here on the right, he had a 5.9 ERA in the last game he pitched in, where before he got traded in July. As he went through, he gave up 1 or less runs in 7 of his 9 games he pitched. He finished the season. He went from a 5.9 to a 3.4 in 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12 games. So he's obviously got the potential to be a stud. I think it's going to be a really great year for him. Another team, I hate saying it. I was mentioning it to you before that I think might come out of the gate kind of strong this year with the new coach and everything, is going to be the New York Mets. I think a lot of people are doubting them. I think it's going to be a sneaky year. I hate saying it because I hate the Mets with a passion, but what better way for the Mets to kind of get themselves back by a division where everyone's focused on the Braves and Philly. And then we see it from the Marlins every year where everyone's focused on New York, Philly, Atlanta. And then all of a sudden, wait, how did the Marlins get 78 wins? Like I think that's the kind of season you could kind of see from them. I think all the hype around how much money they spent is going to slowly kind of die down. And they're just going to go back to being the other New York team now that Soto's in the Bronx. I think they could have a push for a wild card this year. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious to hear.
Well, one, as a Braves fan, I hate everything you just said. But no, I'm just kidding. But Also, just keep in mind that the Marlins get a lot of those wins every year from the Mets. So just remember that part.
That is true. The Mets and the Nationals are like 50% of the wins in the at least division.
So I don't know. I mean, they brought back Alonso. That was kind of inevitable. If they didn't do that, they were just directionless. I still think they kind of are. They've got a lot of talent, obviously, in Lindor. Um, you know, I think the problem has always been, at least in the last 3 to 5 years, um, really they not the talent level that they have. They spend the money, they bring in good people. A lot. The issue is talent evaluation at some level. I think a lot of times they bring in players that are over the hump and they overpay them. It's kind of the New York way. The Yankees have done the same over the years. They just don't care if they miss on somebody because they just have more money. You know, in leadership, but by no means is Buck Showalter a bad manager. He'll be in the Hall of Fame someday. You know, but how do you get a bunch of young kids to listen to an older man? You know, they seem to have their own agenda, and so until I see,
Well,
until I
they fired Showalter, remember?
I do, but until I see how they mesh together with this new manager, I'm gonna hold my breath from saying that they'll improve. I mean, how many did they win last year?
Let's see.
I mean, the Mets haven't been really relevant for a long time. They'll make the playoffs here and there, but they haven't won a chip since '86.
I'm
So,
trying to pull it up now. I think they were um right around where they're projected. They're projected around 82, 83. They finished at they finished at 74 and 87.
so 82, 83 is potentially a wild card berth. You know, because I think Arizona had 83 wins or something like that last year, and they made the wild card. No, it was
Mm-hmm.
I think the lowest wild card in the NL had 73 wins. So
Yeah, you got let's
or
see.
83 wins.
Cubs were at 83. The wild card was
It was Florida, right?
you got Philly at 90 wins, Miami at 84, Arizona at 84.
So
Because
Arizona had
they had to play
84
a
wins.
play-in game.
Yeah, because they had the tie break.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't know that I necessarily buy it, but I think that they'll be better than last year for sure. I mean, the message kind of gets stale in the clubhouse after a while. We'll see.
Right.
Their big,
So who
their two biggest rivals both made the playoff. Three other teams in their division made the playoffs after declaring themselves the winners of the offseason last year. You know, so they've got something to prove.
right. So and now for the other side of the coin, who do you think we just don't need to pay attention to this year? I mean, obviously you get the teams like the A's and the Nats who really aren't going to be doing much. But who's the team that you think a lot of people are going to give attention to, but they're just not going to be it this year?
I think the Phillies losing Reese Hoskins is a bigger loss than they think it is, maybe than a lot of fans are paying attention to. They're a deep team and they have a good farm system, you know, which is evident with guys like Alec Boehm that come in and just absolutely tear the cover off the ball, especially against the Braves. Unfortunately, he loves to hit against us. But I think losing Reese Hoskins is going to set the Phillies back a little bit, and that's going to be where some of those wins for maybe the Mets come in. They're my pick to take a step back. I mean, I hope as a Braves fan that they take a step back, but losing Reese Hoskins, I mean, he's a reliable third baseman. He's good for 25 to 30 dingers a year. He hits for average. He's an okay base runner. It's hard to find a good third baseman for a reasonable price, and he just signed for a big deal over there. So,
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, obviously, as a Braves fans, we're rooting on the Philly downfall at any point. You know, every time it's the same thing with the Mets. Every time they lose, it's a win for us, regardless.
absolutely. But I just think Reese Hoskins is a bigger piece of that team than a lot of people are giving him credit for, and I think he's going to be a big addition to the Brewers.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Philly roster right now. I mean, they didn't really bring anyone in. I mean, they'll have Bryson Stott. It all depends on where they decide to play Harper, because they still have him listed as a DH. Obviously, they've been trying to play him at first. You know, if you play him at first, you move Boehm over to third base. But other than that, you have Boehm. Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, and then Edmundo Sosa. Or unless you decide to play Garrett Stubbs at first base is really your only other option, or maybe spend the offseason making Pache a shortstop or a third baseman or something and move people around.
You can't pitch hit for the guy every day though.
Yeah. God, shitting on a Brave fan. We had to shit on a former Brave.
I love the guy, but man, the guy couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and that's why he went to Oakland.
I think so. I have two teams I'm looking at. The first one I am 100% confident. The second one I was very wait and see on them last year, and I still am this year because I feel like they're just one of those teams that they can't put it together. And every year, all we hear is like trade talk. But I'll go into them in a sec. The big one I'm absolutely positive is not going to make the impact that a lot of people think they are is the Tigers. I mentioned this to you before we even started. The Tigers they're projected to go 500 this year. They're projected to go 81-81. I don't understand that at all. I really don't. I think this is a team that they didn't bring anyone in. So from what, because I ended up, because they had played all those day games at the end of the year and all the double headers, I managed to watch a good portion of their games towards the end of the season. Ibanez was decent. Torkelson is Torkelson. If he starts off hot, he stays hot. If he doesn't, he struggles. But I mean, he's 24, so he could have a good year. He could struggle again. Colt Keith, they're very high on him, being their new rookie and everything. And I think they already have him projected on ESPN to be on the opening day roster. So I think that's just a given at this point. But like I said, they didn't bring anyone in for a fielder position. They brought in Mark Canha. They kept him. That's really it. I mean, Kerry Carpenter's average. You got Nick Maton, who's been good at times. He's had flashes, and Akil Baddoo is just getting too old. I don't even say. You know what's crazy? It feels like he's getting old. He's only 25. Like, it feels like he's been in the league forever. Like, I feel like I always hear his name somehow. Like, I feel like I could go back to like 2015 video games and find Akil Baddoo in there somewhere. Pitching wise, they didn't bring anyone. You got Chafin, who's good. Flaherty, I think, could have a bounce back year. I really want to see what he does in this division. But other than that, you brought in Maeda, and that's it. Like, you're kind of banking on Skubal and Joey Wentz to have kind of bounce back years, and Fado to, not blow nearly every pitching opportunity he gets this year, and Alex Lang not to blow 25 saves. I don't understand it. I really don't. I've tried looking at like websites from the people who are experts on this. I can't wrap my head around any of their ideas as why. So I'm fully fading them. I also brought that one up a couple of weeks ago. One of my shows was fade them because there's no way they're they might play good, but they're not a 500 team.
I've actually got two other teams, right, that I was thinking about. Just Maeda alone, I was thinking about the Twins, right? And that might be where some of the wins are coming from for Detroit, right? They lost Maeda and Sonny Gray, and Maeda went to Detroit.
True, yeah.
And also, I mean, the Twins, they've got some young players, and I think they're just kind of going toward the younger generation. Justin Topa, they traded for. He had a 2.61 ERA last year, granted in limited starts. I mean, that's a pretty solid piece to work on and develop. And then the other one obviously was, like I said, LAA, but I just don't know what they're going to do.
It's one of those things. Like, it's like, I mean, it's like watching. It's literally watching a Hall of Famer who he doesn't want to leave the team. They don't want to trade him, and they can't find, because of his value. The thing is I think they screwed themselves, because if they were going to trade Trout, his market was 3 years ago when they first got Ohtani. And that's the crappy thing, is you were gambling with the, hey, we could get a bunch of prospects enough to show Ohtani, hey, we have 6 or 7 top tier guys that are going to be ready by the time you sign this next contract. But you stuck with Mike Trout because at the time it was the right thing to do to stay with you because he was playing amazing. He was playing MVP level, and then he gets hurt. And then he's out almost the whole next year. And then he's out almost the whole next year. And now if a team's trading for him, you're trading your future for a hope that he plays like he did. The first thing I'm doing, if I'm the GM of the Angels, I'm firing the training staff because everyone's always hurt. Like every week, there's someone who's out for the season. They got to the point the player they drafted 2 weeks after they drafted him, they had to call him up because they didn't have a shortstop.
Is that an issue of training, or is that the top-down culture of you got to play? You're getting paid millions of dollars. Play, damn it.
True, if that's the case, then Rendon would be out there.
Well, I don't know.
They wouldn't be putting up with his crap.
I don't know. $38 million. How much does the owner make a year? More
true.
Than that, I guess. I don't know.
So, but the other one I'm very interested in seeing what they do is going to be the Guardians, because we saw it last year where they talked constantly about, are they going to trade Shane Bieber? Are they going to trade anyone? Are they going to bring pieces? What are they going to do? Because they're stuck in this middle level where they weren't good enough for the last 2 years to compete with the Twins and to like fight with them for the division and give them any kind of scare, because they got close, but it wasn't like, oh, they got close. It's, oh, okay, wait till next week when they lose 2 out of 3 to Minnesota and they go back into a slump. But you have the Royals, who looks like they're almost finishing their rebuild and they're like kind of starting their way back up. Obviously they're not going to make the playoffs this year. I think they're a year away from being a year or two away. But what do you do? Do you bring in pieces? You don't have a strong enough farm system to bring in top tier pieces. So you got to hope that Ramirez and Shane Bieber and all these other pieces just come together and have like one of the most dominant seasons. And I just don't think it's in their form. I think they get to the All-Star break and they have to look at possibly, hey, are we going to try this rebuild, or are we just good enough to maybe make the wild card? And I just don't trust them this year. I would just say they need to start it over.
I think they just need to start over. I mean, he's going to get – Jose Ramirez is going to get paid $20 million this year and some change. And they owe him 141 total. I mean, I think they still got 4 years left on his contract, something like that. I mean, what are you going to do? A team like that, I mean, their payroll is under $100 million a year, something like that. So, almost a quarter of your payroll is going to be taken up by one guy. Yeah, he's really that good, but I mean, what do you got to do? I mean, you've got to rebuild your farm system. You need some picks.
I mean, like I'm looking at their roster right now. Like on paper, this looks like you have Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie. You have Tanner Bibby, who I think is a very underrated player. Xavion Curry was a solid flip starter. And then Gavin Williams, who was fairly good at the end of the season as he was kind of just getting into the rhythm of it. You brought in Scott Barlow, who was an all-star. You have Bo Naylor, who's a stud. You have his brother Josh, who's a stud. You got Jose Ramirez, Andres Jimenez, and you have Laureano Kwan and Miles Straw in the outfield. On paper, this looks like a very solid team.
Not to mention you got Clase on the mound.
Yeah, you got an all-star closer, and you just can't put it together. Like, I don't, like, it's one of those where if they went into that now and they just said, we're going to start this over, we're going to start this rebuild, I think they could get enough pieces that in 5 years, they would be back in this same scenario.
So,
like, somewhat good.
I was going to say, if a team like, the Dodgers was in that division, they'd win 130 games.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, those teams can't even beat each other, and it's always a battle between the White Sox and the Twins and the Guardians, and The White Sox are not even going to be relevant this year. They're going to probably win 60, maybe 65 games. I don't know where the over-under is right now, but so it's really always just you said Detroit might be in there. I think it's the battle of the who cares. It's cannon fodder for some other team in the playoffs.
Someone put up on Twitter the other day. I wish I saved it. Someone said that the Guardians are the Tampa Bay Rays, where they just can't seem to keep the same players over and over, but except they can't do it successfully.
Well, the difference between those two teams is that Tampa, I think, I mean, they don't even open the upper deck. They're a constant playoff team. They win the division a lot. They're a top 2-3 seed every year, and they don't even sell tickets to the upper section of their stadium most of the time because the average attendance is like the lowest in the league. Besides,
move the team to Montreal, please.
I mean, Miami has that problem, but that's just because Miami doesn't really care that much about putting out a good on-field product. They're more about making money. And
the stadium's like catered to like, hey, come to the stadium and do all this stuff, and don't worry about how bad our baseball team is. Don't focus on that.
It's completely like a social event. It's a play. It's like going to a club in LA, but it's Miami.
Yeah. There's a nightclub in the stadium.
Oh yeah,
like it's. But I think 77.5 is a good line. I think this is that team that they're just gonna finish right at like 500 again. And it's gonna be one of those where I haven't even taken a look at their schedule yet, but they're gonna get like a 10, 15 game window. But they actually finished in third. Detroit finished in second last year, thanks to like a very hot streak at the end. But I think I think this is one of those teams where they're gonna get like a 2-week stretch of like Oakland, the White Sox, the Nationals, and the Rockies, and they're gonna like go from like 500 to like 10 games above 500, and then they're gonna have another stretch where it's Baltimore, Minnesota, New York, both New York teams in LA, and they're just gonna get smacked again, and it's gonna go back. Like I feel like they just can't stop flip flopping.
So, do you want to lead into our division winners?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that. So, all right, let's start with the East. Who do you got?
National League East.
Yeah, let's do National League and AL. Who do you got for each division?
Well, for the NL East, yeah, I'm a Braves fan, but I think by far and away last year the best team, at least in the regular season in all of baseball, was the Braves, and they really didn't lose much. I mean, they declined, the option on Eddie Rosario, but then they brought in Jared Kelenic. Eli White was a solid bench player, and I think he and Kelenic are going to platoon off the bench, depending on who's pitching that day. And both are average defenders, but solid bats. I think that, you're getting, like I mentioned earlier, you're getting a lot of pitching back, especially in your bullpen. On top of what was already a really strong bullpen, you get guys like Enoa back. You added Reynaldo Lopez, who could be a long reliever. He's been a starter in the past, and he could probably have spot starts if we have injuries along the way. And I mean, he throws gas. Dude throws like 100 miles an hour. So I've got the Braves in the NL East. As far as the AL East is concerned, like I mentioned, I think it's got to be the Orioles. It's got to be the Orioles. I mean, they have the best young talent, and they just signed the best for, I think that Corbin Carroll is, if not the best, top 3 starting pitchers in all of baseball when he's healthy.
Burns.
Corbin Burns, yes.
I'm gonna keep a Corbin Carroll, Corbin Burns counter sheet on the bottom for the whole season.
But Corbin Burns is one of is at worst a top 3 starting pitcher in all of baseball, and they've got, like I said, they've got Gunnar Henderson. They've got what's his name, the catcher? Wow,
Rutschman.
Yeah, they got Adley Rutschman. I mean, he was the number 1 prospect coming out of college by a country mile when he was at Oregon State. and he's certainly lived up to it. I mean, his pop rate is right up there with the best of them. I mean, we always like to talk about Sean Murphy here as Braves fans and his pop rate, right? Or his pop time, how fast he can get up and throw a guy out. But Rutschman is right there. He's a split second behind him, and he's younger. He's under team control on his rookie contract, and I think the Orioles are going to be good for a long time.
Yeah, I like that. I'm with you on that. The one player I'm really kind of like he's who you need to watch out for this year on that team is Anthony Santander. I feel like just because of how good that team, and it's not even that, him and their bullpen are two of the most underrated things on this team. Because yeah, everyone talks about damn cat won't shut up. You got, I mean, obviously Kramer is like that weird pitcher who like you don't understand how people can't hit him, and then you watch him play and you're just like, holy shit, how did he just get 8 strikeouts? And Grayson Rodriguez, Dylan Tate are both solid pieces, but you have Felix Bautista, and no one ever talks about him. Everyone's like so focused on Jackson Holiday, and now Corbin Burns is pitching. Like I feel like everyone forgets Felix Bautista throws 102 miles an hour with control, and no one can hit him. Like it, and I think he's gonna have another great year. But Santander and Austin Hayes out in that outfield, they might be another team. We could call them the Baltimore Braves. They got Sam Hilliard. They went and got who was it? They got someone from the Braves. Oh, they got Kimbrel and they got Tucker Davidson on their team now. But I think they're studs. I think Jordan Westbrook is going to be a good player. It's going to be called up probably in like June, maybe. I think they have too many good pieces for them to call him up now. But they're studs. I think that division's too close. I think it's going to be again like we're going to have 3 teams fighting going into the last week of the season. But for the NL East, obvious same thing. I got the Braves. I have it going just how everyone normally has it. I have Braves, Phillies, Mets, Marlins, Nats. I just think that last year could have. I just don't see the Marlins kind of putting those numbers up again. I think they were just riding off the fact that Arias was going through a record-breaking season. But I just don't think they have, and I don't think they have it. They always go up a year and then make the playoffs, and then they struggle for 2. So I think this is a struggle year.
Oh, yeah, last year when it comes to Arise, the scorekeeper before he even comes to the plate is just putting a single on the scorecard.
Right, yeah.
But that's all he did. There wasn't much more to it than that. I mean, he's getting on base, which is great, but they didn't really have any power. I mean, they had Soler, and that's pretty much it.
He's a free agent. He's still available. So, I mean, I would love him coming back to the Braves, but I think he demands he needs too much money, and he's earned it. Like that's the thing. It's not like Tim Anderson asking for like 10, 15 million a year. Like this guy's earned his contract.
Well, and we don't need a DH. We have Ozuna, so
yeah, exactly from the Braves.
Ozuna from the Braves. That's right.
So going into the Central, we've been talking about the AL Central in this whole show. But I have the Twins winning the division, and I think the Royals kind of fight for that second spot. But in the NL Central, I got the Cubs winning it this year. I can't bring myself. Sorry, DJ. I can't bring myself to say the Cardinals to win a division. I pray on their downfall every time. I wish Wainwright stayed 1 extra year so we could get an extra 10 wins off him. But yeah, I think the Cubs are primed for a great season. They just brought in one of the best free agents that was from Japan, not named Shohei or Yamamoto. And I've heard a rumor they still have a chance of getting Bellinger. If they get Bellinger, I think they're definitely a shoo-in. But I'm high on the Cubs this year. I think the Cardinals, they just have the pieces, but I think this is a year like for them to like get everything together before they make a push.
Yeah, I agree with the Cubs pick. I'm curious to see though what the new makeup of the Cardinals is in that division. Without Molina and without Pujols, what are they going to look like? Because of course they were the grizzled vets, but Molina was there forever. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like. What I guess is this their version of the well, I guess not quite yet. It can't be, but their version of like the baby Cardinals. I mean, they've still got they've still got Goldschmidt and they got Arenado at third base, and those guys are just an automatic. I mean, they're gonna get on base. It's what's around them that's the question mark. How are they going to respond behind the plate? That was a big part of their defense, even at the end. I think the Cubs they're they've got a lot of experience. They've got some grizzled vets mixed with young inexperienced guys. You've got your Dansby Swanson, right? For example, he's a world champion with the Braves. He's one of the best defensive infielders in the game today. He's a leader in the clubhouse. I really like that pick. As far as the AL Central is concerned, I already mentioned kind of what I think. I think it's kind of the battle of the who cares. It's basically they're all fighting for their chance to get destroyed in the playoffs and be a first round exit. But in that division, I do have the Twins as well, despite losing some pieces. I just think that none of the teams in there really inspire any confidence. So even if I'm wrong about that, again, they're not. I don't think the winner of that division is going to make any noise, and their second place team isn't going to have the record to make a wild card push. So
yeah, and I think with the Cardinals, at least in my opinion, like I feel like we like the last couple of years, every year it's like a reunion special, like an episode where like everyone from when the show was great comes back and he's like, hey, remember me? Like Lance Lynn, who I'll give him credit. After the Braves smoked him last year, we got the 7 runs off him in 4 innings, and then the Marlins put up 8 on him in 4 innings. He pitched really well for the rest of September. I mean, he gave up only his ERA went from a 6 to under a 5 in just 4 games, and big games they needed big wins to keep San Francisco out of the playoffs and to shut out San Diego. I mean, he threw 6-7 innings, only giving up 2, 3, 4 hits each. I think he's got he's got some kind of promise going in. I mean, Liberatore, I think, is going to have a solid year. But the big 2 names I've been Sonny Gray signed with him over the Braves. I'm never going to forgive him for that. And Kyle Gibson he just didn't have a spot in the rotation last year. And they brought in like Kenyon Middleton, Tapera, who I just thought he was decent on the Angels. I know Lydia's going to kill me for that comment because she hates him. But I thought he wasn't too bad. Like, I feel like they're this team that's just missing like that one small piece and they just haven't figured it out yet. And maybe it's bringing back, Lance Lynn and Matt Carpenter, and maybe they'll remember the good old days and they'll just absolutely dominate. But I think there's too many young teams that when we get towards the end of like July, we're getting the last 2 months of the season, and they got too much energy on these guys.
Maybe Sonny Gray is just a competitor and he wants to pitch against the best, but otherwise I can't figure why you would want to pitch against the Braves instead of for the Braves.
He's a bastard. That's what it is.
That lineup is disgusting, man.
I can't wait because if he faces the Braves this year, I'm gonna place like a huge long ass parlay that's just like Sonny Gray to give up like 10 hits, 8 runs, the Braves to win by 7, like just absolutely shit on him in the first 5 innings of the game.
Let's see. Hold on. Atlanta Braves versus.
So while you're looking that up, I'm gonna go over my my NL West. What I got, I have the NL West obviously is the Dodgers. Instead, I'm gonna do a team that's gonna make the playoffs because obviously everyone knows the Dodgers are gonna win this division. I think the Giants pull it out this year. I think they pull the 2nd spot. Arizona could be riding a high and could struggle. San Diego, I think Machado is gone this year. He has an opt out. I think he's got one more opt out in his contract. I think this is a spot where he would just he either demands a trade or they request a trade, or someone just gives them too good of an offer and they can't pass it up. And then they just try to rebuild around Tatis and Musgrove. I think the Giants built a really good roster, and it's one of those that unless you're like really following them, you wouldn't have noticed it. I mean, they brought in what's his name, the outfielder, Jung Hoo Lee, who, if you're an MLB The Show head like me, he was a beast. Conforto, I think, is going to have a good year. They brought in a lot of these kids that are from the West Coast. Luis Matos, I think, is primed for a good year. Yastrzemski's always been average. But Taro Estrada and Marco Luciano in the middle of your infield is going to be fun to watch. And I am so excited to watch it this year.
I mean, the Giants are a great team. They're always well managed. Hell, a couple years ago, unexpectedly so, they won 107 games. It's a franchise record. And then they fired Kapler. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. We can go on and on about that. I mean, I like what they've got. They've got some good players over there. They got a good young pitcher in Logan Webb. You know, I really like his stuff. He's a true number one ace. When he pitched against the Braves, he totally torched us. We couldn't hit anything off him, and I like that pick, but I still got to go with the Dodgers. I mean, again, I hate the Dodgers. Like, full transparency, I hate them. I respect what they do because, you know, we Braves face them so often in the playoffs in key critical situations, and it's always competitive. But they've got a solid roster. I mean, they paid for it, and they're gonna pay for it. Right now, they've got Ohtani on a deferred contract, so this year he's only getting he's only costing the team $1 million, but after that, it's up to like $40-something million every year. You know, for the next, I think it's 11 years, something like that. And, you know, it looks great now, but what if he never pitches again? Is he worth $700 million? He's not going to pitch this year. He had Tommy John in the offseason. What is his hitting going to look like? You know, I mean, even with the Tommy John, you know, you can't throw the ball. How is he going to feel swinging the ball or swinging the bat? Is it going to affect his mechanics? I mean, you never know. Even just a few percentage points makes a huge difference in baseball over the course of 162 games.
Well, yeah, and especially like you think about the way teams have started like changing the way players approach everything. I mean, think about it. They made Cedric Mullins switch from a switch hitter to just a lefty, and he made it all-star the next year. I mean, obviously Ohtani is going to be an all-star regardless because he's that big of a name. But what if they just say, hey, you know, you're by far and away the best hitter in baseball, and you're the best pitcher, but we have 9 pitchers on our roster, starting pitchers on our roster that are at that top level. Like, we could pencil you in as like the 6th starter,
which means he's going to do a lot of relief work,
or yeah, not even relief work, just like what they almost did with the Angels. Just instead of having him pitch every 5 to 6 days, just once every week, like, just say, hey, we'll sit Yamamoto one extra day and have Shohei pitch today. Like, I'm not too sure. And the big thing, obviously, in the West to watch out for is in the West. Snell is still projected to go to some team in the West, whether it's AL or NL. The last I looked at it, the top 3 teams to get him that are not the Yankees or the Mets was San Francisco, San Diego, and the Angels. Surprisingly, which would
the Angels have the money, but nothing's gonna happen.
That'd be more of a like, he just said, fuck it, I just want my money, and then eventually you'll trade me. But I mean, I think that's something to really watch out for is but the one thing I'm curious to see what happens is the new rule in baseball, if you pull a pitcher before, I think it was either the 4th or the 5th inning, I have to double check it. If you pull a pitcher before that inning, you lose your DH for the rest of the game. What are the Giants going to do with this? Because they very famously last year would pitch a relief pitcher 2 innings and have Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, or not Logan Webb. They would do it more with like Alex Cobb and a couple other guys. But they would have them pitch the 3rd through the 7th.
See, I think a lot of teams do platoon. or have what we call a bullpen game, or even just I don't even know if you could call that a bullpen game.
They call it an opener instead of a starter. It's just, hey, put a relief pitcher in there, see what they're swinging at, and then say, okay, hey, we'll put our starter in for the 3rd through the 7th inning now, while the batters are getting their rhythm, and now they got to get adjusted to our best pitcher.
Don't even start me on that conversation, man. I'm a Nolan Ryan guy all day long, and I'm
that's what they did.
So soft now, and baseball is. It's just like I understand nobody wants to throw 130 pitches, but these guys used to do it every day.
Sean Helge, Luke Jackson, and Tristan Beck all started games last year. They have never started a game before in their life.
Starting Luke Jackson for any team is a bold move.
They started Luke Jackson in the first inning of a game in May. I mean, but I think they kind of took that approach and just said, all right, we're gonna stop this, because outside of Logan Webb, they brought in Robbie Ray, they brought Jordan Hickson, and Kyle Harrison is probably gonna make opening day roster, and I really like him. So I think they kind of like mixed and matched that. I don't like Jordan Hicks as a starter. I wish he would just go back to the bullpen and go to a closer role. But obviously, I get it. He's going to make more money as a starter than he is a relief pitcher.
Robbie Ray going to the Giants is interesting. All right.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that happened until I just looked at their roster.
It would have been cool to see him go back to Arizona.
Yeah, true. It'd be a good vet move, but here we are. But, all right, our last segment of the day. We're gonna look into the crystal ball. Drew, what is one kind of future bet, kind of future prediction you got for any team this year? Out of everything we do, what's your favorite? You're gonna stand against a million people and still argue this, even if you're wrong. What do you got?
Max Fried is going to win the Cy Young this year. Because he's going into a contract year, right? He's been having problems with blisters, but when it comes down to it, in the clutch moments, he is the guy that steps up. If we see the Max Fried that we saw, and that's a long shot, Cy Young, NL Cy Young. They got Strider as number 1.
Fifth best odds at $1,300. $10 wins you 130.
If he can stay healthy, if he can get, I don't know, 17 to 20 wins and keep his ERA around 3, which he will, because that's usually where he is, I think he's going to win the Cy Young. Because he is. I don't know that the Braves re-sign him, but he has that famous Game 7 resume from 2021, where he got his foot stepped on and turned on Mad Max. He's the new Mad Max. He used to be Strasburg, then it was Scherzer, and now it's Mad Max Fried, and I think he's going to win the Cy Young. So that's my future.
Every Brave player that goes into a contract year scares me ever since Freddie, because everyone said, yeah, Freddie's not leaving. And obviously that whole situation with his agent happened. And then we were like, yeah, Dansley's not leaving. He's the hometown kid. He loves Atlanta. He loves this place like more than his family almost. Boom, he leaves. And then now everyone was like, oh, and then, he wasn't as great, but I think everyone in the Braves organization had a soft spot for Soroka. Just from everything he's went through, and then they traded him. I was just like, oh, that hurt.
He was the best. That year where he had his best year, he was the best pitcher on the Braves, and we had Fried, and we had Foltynewicz, and we had some other. I think we even had Gausman that year, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Gausman was there too.
So we had some good pitchers, and he was the best pitcher on that staff. And then he's just never the same. They've got Strider listed as the favorite to win it, but I think he's got to get his hard hit rate way down. He's prone to giving up long balls, so his ERA stays relatively high. Granted, he'll pitch. He's kind of in between. He'll either he'll have a clean 5 innings, but he'll pitch 110 pitches, right? Because he walks some guys sometimes.
My hottest take I've ever had, and the more he starts, the more it just proves me wrong. After his rookie year, the first thing I remember saying after he pitched in that Philly series and he got blown out, I looked at my dad and I said, they need to do a reverse John Smoltz and they need to move him to the pen. Move him to a closer and pitch him every day because he throws way too fast to be a starter and he's going to blow his arm out. And then the next year, he was the Cy Young candidate, and I had to eat shit the whole season while rooting for him.
The only reason he didn't win it is because of his hard hit rate. If it weren't for that, his ERA
and
would
Blake
be lower.
Snell turning it on at the very end of the season like a god.
Yeah,
but yeah, I get what you're saying. It's we see it with Hunter Green. You remember his first start? He played against the Braves. He struck out the first 9 batters he saw. Like with these guys that throw 105 and then have a slider. You see it with Aroldis Chapman. If they have it and the team can't time it, it's over. You're not hitting them. But when they don't have it, it's disgusting. It's horrible. And you want to question whether that guy is worth the money that he gets paid. And I think teams figured out over the last year and a half, if we just sit until it's a 2-strike count or until it's a pitch we love, Strider will walk us or force a ball right down the middle. And that was what we saw in Philly in the last 5 of the season, not even in the playoffs when he didn't pitch well against them in the regular season. They just sat down and said, just sat there and said, I'm going to wait until you either walk me or you force me to swing the bat. And then when you force me to swing the bat, I know where the pitch is coming and I'm going to smoke it. And he did. But yeah, I know I like them. I think if you want a long shot, like a good one to root for, Max Fried is definitely a good pick there. I like that. I think the only other person I was really looking at that I thought would be, a solid take I would say, obviously, I think Yamamoto would be one everyone's taking, but I think if Tyler Glasnow stays healthy, I think he's a solid option too. Because we saw it when he came back, he was averaging 10.5 strikeouts a game. He just can't stay healthy because he throws 100 miles an hour. But no, I like that. For mine, I'm going with, and I'm fading them again just because, not just because I think they're going to play bad this year, because I like I said with this team, I don't think they're a 500 team, but I do think they're going to have a lot of big steps this year. And it's the Detroit Tigers. I'm taking them to miss the playoffs. If you see right down here, I even popped it up higher on the screen here. The odds are minus 217, which obviously is not the greatest odds, but $10, $100 wins you 50 back. Mainly because not only do they have to face a Twins team who, like you said, are due for some kind of regression, but look at every other team in that AL West that they're obviously not going to win the division. Look at every other team in the AL they have to fight for a wild card spot with. You have Baltimore, New York, Toronto, Tampa, because all 4 of them are going to be fighting for the division. And you might even have Boston, because even though they're not the best, they still pump out 75, 76 wins a year.
And then you got Seattle.
You have Seattle, you have Houston, you have Texas, and then you have Minnesota. That is 10 teams that you have to be better than at least 3 of them. And unless everyone on those teams get hurt, you're not going to be better than them. Maybe next year, maybe once you guys see, hey, okay, these are our 10, 11 players that are legit and we're keeping, and let's find the pieces around them. But it's not this year. So that's mine. I'm taking them to not make the playoffs. Not only like I said, I think I put $100 on it just to get 50 back. I think it's an easy win. And I will, if Detroit does enough to make the playoffs this year, I will gladly eat that $100 and take that loss.
I like it. Yeah, I don't think 81 wins gets you a playoff berth anymore, even with the expanded
especially not in the American League. I mean, you could justify with how strong some of the top teams are in the NL, there's enough of a gap that you could maybe hit that at 81. But when you have 5 teams fighting for the East, a single divisional title, and all going to be in the playoff race, you got to be better. Not only do you have to be better than 3 teams in your division to justify making it, but you have to be better than about 7, 8 other teams. There's just no shot.
So bold prediction, there might be 2 divisions that only have 1 representative in the playoff, and it's their division winner.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
I think a lot of the wild cards are going to be occupied by the NL East and then the AL East.
And you got the NL West too. I mean, think about it. You got the Diamondbacks who could put up 90 games. You got the Giants who could borderline put up 90. San Diego technically can still put up a 500 record without with what they got, because although they lost Soto, they still got Bogarts. They still got Joe Musgrove. They still have solid pieces that can get them through the season.
Is it possible we have 3 divisions that only have one representative?
No, I think you know what I think? You know how last year we were all watching the AL wild card because every game was deciding first, second, third, fourth in the AL East. I think that's what we're going to see in the NL this year, because you have the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Brewers and the Reds that could fight for it. You have the Dodgers, who are definitely going to make it. Then you have the Giants, Padres, Diamondbacks, and then you have the Braves, Philly, New York, and maybe Miami, all fighting for that playoff spot.
Yeah.
Like I as much as the league is unbalanced with, we obviously know who the top team is in both sides now, and like obviously who the favorite is. Like there's 9-10 teams on both divisions that could potentially have a wild card spot that you could tell me this team makes the wild card at least. And if like in the NL, if it's outside of like Pittsburgh, Washington, Colorado, really, you could tell me this team makes the playoffs, and I could see a valid reason why. And the same in the AL outside the
compact. There's a couple of teams at the top, and then everybody else is like kind of right here between 75 to 90 wins, right? And then there's just the 3 or 4 teams on each side that are just absolutely trash.
Someone said we very may well see a team have a chance at getting the number 1 pick in the MLB draft lottery, and that team go over 500 this year.
Yeah, the A's look pretty good down the stretch at times. Well, at times, even for the amount
of talent. The A's to make the playoffs is plus 50,000. I think it's a good worth to put about $500.
I got a bridge to sell you too, but man, I tell you what, you got me excited for baseball season. I'm ready.
I'm excited, man. We're all set up. Just to give you guys a heads up of our scheduling for what we're gonna do for this over the spring training. Pitchers and catchers report in about a week. We might have a show then. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later, but we're gonna try to get a show every couple of weeks, and then we're gonna do a big preseason show right before the probably the Sunday before opening night, and then we're gonna have a show for that upcoming Sunday of what our opening night takes and what we saw. So thank you all for watching. I'm very excited for this season. For all of you watching, we are going to be doing a channel-wide fantasy baseball league this year. It's not going to be a head-to-head stat. It's going to be rotisserie style, so you can set your lineups every day, whatever your total hits, runs, home runs, strikeouts, every stat. It's going to label you 1 through 10, and whoever has the best out of every single stat combined is going to be the winner. Because DJ is boring and didn't want to do it the other way. I'm kidding. I'm going to get yelled at for that. But we're going to have that set up in a couple of weeks. So make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, Twitch, anywhere you have for frequency's sake. Make sure you go follow me over on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, whatever you have at Gotham Gambling, because we're posting baseball plays every single day when the season comes out. Drew, do you got any socials you want to plug?
Just my Instagram. It's gonna be Drewbert7810, and that's it.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We're gonna have more stuff coming throughout the next couple of weeks as the season gets closer and closer. Everyone have a great night.
See ya.